got the heads of state and government who are in this audience, and we are most happy. When we started the process of operationalizing the African Credit Rating Agency, the acronym that came up was the ACRA. And we quickly realized that in West Africa there is a very historic and vibrant city of Accra. So it was going to cause confusion. So we changed it to Accra. Because if you say AF blah blah blah, it becomes very, very difficult. So the easiest is Accra. Can you say Accra? I think it's easy. And I must apologize to the president of Ethiopia. I didn't read him out. But there's a secret behind that. Throughout my life, I've been a speechwriter. I've been a speech maker. Today is the first time that I'm a moderator. So you understand. So with that, may I call on you, Your Excellency, to make your remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, MC. Your Excellency, Abdul Majid Tebboune, President of the People's Democratic Republic of Algeria and Chair of the APRM Forum, Your Excellency Hakainde Hichilema, President of the Republic of Zambia, Your Excellency William Samuel Ruto, President of the Republic of Kenya, Your Excellency Deputy Chairperson Dr. Munich, Your Excellency Ambassador Calve Gatete, Under Secretary General of UNECA, Excellencies, Ambassadors, ladies and gentlemen. It is my honor to welcome you to Addis, to this important session to discuss the creation of African Credit Agency, ACRA. I'm happy you made it very simple. There are some institutions in the midst of us that are pretty much tongue-twisting. This one is more simpler and straight, and thank you for that initiative. Allow me to extend my gratitude to President Tebboune, Chair of the African Peer Review Forum. Excellencies, the African Development Bank latest report disclosed that Africa is the second fastest growing continent. Not only this, more than a dozen of African countries among the world's 20 fastest growing countries. Despite the progress we have made, the international rating agencies have often presented a distorted and unhelpful view of our economies, and their assessments are pretty much characterized by unpredictability and inconsistency. The lack of objectivity on credit rating of our economies, on the one hand, has severely hampered our ability to access capital, and on the other, limited our capacity to integrate with the global financial system. Consequently, this lopsided perception has hindered our genuine effort to achieve structural economic transformation and sustainable development. Even now, as Africa's economy demonstrates resilience and continuing its upward trajectory in the post-COVID era, an African credit rating system is more critical than ever. This will sustain the momentum of Africa's growth and progress. Excellencies, 2 years ago, while we have been diligently working to maintain our country's economic growth, one international rating agency relegated us to the so-called junk territory. It wasn't only the rating that was problematic, but the misuse of terminology isn't it very much condescending. The lexicon was nothing but a page torn from a different era, a subtle, stinging reminder of an outdated and offensive classification of African countries. During that time, only one entity in the whole world stood against the decision made against Ethiopia. It affirmed that the rating did not accurately reflect Ethiopia's creditworthiness, and that entity was the African peer review mechanism. And allow me to seize this opportunity to extend my sincere gratitude for this historic support. It meant a lot to us. That is why, Excellencies, we believe Africa's need for a fair credit rating agency is not a theoretical case. It is rather a reality grounded in facts and lived experience. Since then, Ethiopia has made significant endeavors in its pursuit of genuine economic reform aimed at transforming the lives of its people and fostering prosperity. One notable example, and indeed a fitting backdrop to this important gathering, is the recent launch of Ethiopia's Securities Exchange, an achievement that promises to enhance both Ethiopia's and regional financial and capital market. While we are committing for the establishment of a credible African credit rating agency, it is important that this agency must be grounded in three pillars, as my sister early outlined. That is, robust scientific models, institutional independence, as well as clearly defined parameters to ensure its objectivity. As I conclude, Excellencies, I wish to reiterate Ethiopia's continued commitment towards attaining for the full operationalization of the African Credit Rating Agency. Welcome again, and I thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for that very important speech, where, among others, you highlighted the unfairness of the current credit rating system and the need to build a very strong African credit rating agency. We can proceed now, and I would like to invite at this stage His Excellency, the President of Kenya. You have the floor, Your Excellency.
Your Excellency, President Tebboune, President of Algeria and Chair of APRM, Excellencies, Heads of State and Government, representatives of Africa Peer Review Mechanism, the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, the United Nations Commission for Africa, ladies and gentlemen. The time has come to rewrite our history and reclaim our narrative and charge the African Renaissance forward. Esteemed colleagues, our urgent calling is to fulfill our duty to Africa's people and ensure that our continent takes its rightful place in shaping global progress in its full capacity and potential, both as a people and as countries. That is why we are gathered here today. Africa's economic potential is hamstrung by a financial system that misrepresents, distorts, and understates our reality. Global credit rating agencies have not only dealt a bad hand, they have also deliberately failed Africa. They rely on flawed models, distorted and outdated assumptions, and systemic bias, painting an unfair picture of our economies and leading to distorted ratings, exaggerated risks, and unjustifiably high borrowing costs. Let me say this again. Global credit rating agencies have let us down. They continue to rely on very flawed models and outdated assumptions. And the whole system is also biased. The result is that they paint a very unfair picture of our economies, and this has devastating effects because it leads to distorted ratings of what the situation really is. And it also leads to exaggerated risk of our countries and our continent, and obviously that leads to very high borrowing costs. These prejudice assessments come at an enormous cost to Africa. They deter investment, distort global trade, and derail progress towards sustainable development goals. By misjudging Africa, these agencies deny opportunities to investors and economies and deprive nations of prosperity. The numbers tell a damning story. The Africa Peer Review Mechanism and the United Nations Development Programme place the cost of biased credit rating at a staggering $75 billion in lost opportunities. In a continent abundant with natural wealth, vast arable land, billions in diaspora remittances, and the world's largest carbon sinks, credit rating agencies have delivered 94% of all downgrades in the past decade, while arbitrarily designating only 2 African nations as investment grade. We must be bold and call this for what it is: a financial straitjacket imposed on Africa. A system that punishes our economies while rewarding others, even when the fundamentals are comparable, in some cases even better. Excellencies, the foundations of global finance are supposed to be anchored on principles of fairness, transparency, and merit. Yet, these principles are disregarded when it applies to Africa. Africa will no longer accept to be misjudged by scales that overlook our reality. The winds of change are blowing, and our march forward is as unstoppable as it is relentless. An African credit rating agency is not just an alternative. It is, in my opinion, an imperative. This agency must be globally credible and backed by rigorous, credible data and driven by high reporting standards. But more importantly, it must reflect Africa's reality correctly. We will not walk this journey alone. We will build alliances east, west, and north, grounded in shared values of dignity, equity, and progress. We will hold rating agencies to account and demand accurate standards. We will leverage the experience and expertise of Pan-African credit rating, strengthening their capabilities and expanding their reach. The potential impact is profound. Research shows that A one-level improvement in Africa's average credit rating would unlock US dollars 15 billion in additional funding. This alone would outstrip official development assistance and meet some of the critical aspects of Africa's infrastructure needs. The opportunity is within our grasp, and we must seize it. I want to emphasize that this agency will complement international credit rating agencies by filling in data and analytical gaps. In other words, it will do the heavy lifting that international rating agencies may lack the time, inclination, or capacity to undertake. I see the role of Africa credit rating agencies as one of demystifying and democratizing sovereign credit assessments. It must develop a methodology that is objective, transparent, and replicable, rooted in the rigor of science rather than the exclusivity of tradecraft. Let me commend the United Nations Development Programme and AfriCatalyst for stepping forward to support African nations in strengthening their creditworthiness. This is the kind of partnership that we need, rooted in action. I leave you with the words of African Development Bank President Akiwumi Adesina, and I quote, "The perception of risk is not the reality of risk. Wrong scales will always give wrong weights." End of quote. It is time for Africa to use the right scales, one that reflects its true weight. The African Credit Rating Agency will do just that. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, on your call for Africa to rewrite its history and end the very costly unfair rating system, which costs about $75 billion